Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar, the first episode of our webinar series about the Master of Science in International Hospitality Management. I'm very glad today to be here, accompanied by two experts. So my left we have Henrik Kuokkanen, who is Associate Director of the Postgraduate Programs at Institut Bocuse and also Professor of all CSR subjects and matters. On our right we have Eric Vogler, who is Academic Director of the Master of Science in International Hospitality Management. So maybe first we could start by a small presentation of the program, and then talk about various questions we have about the CSR, kind of hospitality go green, as for example, and how can CSR practices in the hospitality industry improve sustainability and business. And finally, we have received lots of questions about the CSR subject on this webinar, so we will have the pleasure to answer all of these questions in the end of this webinar. So maybe, Eric, could you please start by presenting the program in a few words?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. So this program is dedicated to two main targets, two different people, two different kind of students. The first one is for students having a specialty in hospitality, having some experiences in the field, and they will integrate a track called Advanced Track. Advanced track. And the second target is for students having no experience in the field, not at all usually, and so they need to accelerate the pace of the training, so this is why it's called accelerated track. Then we have a program divided into three pieces. The first semester is dedicated to the restaurant industry, F&B, in a broader view. It's in Lyon. The second semester is in Paris and is dedicated to the hotel industry. And the third one will be in the US, Las Vegas, with our partnership with UNLV. And it will be dedicated to international and consulting. Okay,
thank you, Eric. Maybe in a few words, could you please introduce yourself? Henry, do you have an overview of the subject, maybe?
All right, thank you, Natalie. So yes, I'm an associate professor at Institut Bocuse, and corporate social responsibility, CSR, is my main field of research, my field of where I got my PhD in, and I've actually been involved in the topic since 2003, when I first became a CSR consultant already, so very familiar with the history and development of the field.
Okay, great. So maybe we could start by the first question on what exactly is sustainability. Do you have an idea in a few words?
Yes, sustainability, it's one of these buzzwords. It has been that already for quite a while. If we go back in time 15 years, for example, people easily understood that sustainability refers to environmental sustainability, everything that has to do with the natural environment. But more and more it has developed to be the concept that covers all the three pillars, meaning the environmental sustainability, social aspects of sustainability, as well as the profitability aspect of sustainability.
Okay. And do you think, is there a difference between sustainability and corporate social responsibility, as for example?
For me, no. For me, there is not a big difference. Yes, in terms of terminology, there can be certain differences sometimes presented, but in the sort of common speak in terms of industry, these two go hand in hand, and a good example of this is that often companies very interchangeably call their reports about the topic. They may talk about sustainability reports. They may talk about corporate social responsibility reports. So to me, these mean the same.
Okay. And Eric, how do these two topics generally impact businesses?
Of course, these impacts could be positive and negative. Of course, as a teacher and as practitioner, we would like to have always positive impact, like having more businesses because customers would like to have this specific characteristics. But sometimes we have negative performance. People usually have in mind that it will be costly to improve the sustainability into corporate businesses, which is usually not true, but it's still in the mind of people. So, of course, the target, the final objective of sustainability is to better the planet, better the world, better our social environment and our natural environment. So, by definition, it's just positive.
Okay, great. And coming back to the hospitality sector, how are these topics compared to other consumer industries applied in the world of the hospitality? Henry, do you have an idea?
Yes, I mean, the hospitality industry has a special opportunity with CSR compared to many consumer industries, consumer goods industries, and this is simply because there is continued interaction with the guest. If we think of many consumer goods industries, people buy a product that they then use at home, and the only way to connect with the customer is something related to the use of the product or the packaging. Hospitality has a wonderful opportunity in connecting with the customer, and this type of customer connection also allows bringing sustainability initiatives into the customer experience. And this is something that I see more and more happening. If early days, particularly environmental aspects, they were communicated to customers as means of simple information gathering. These days, the industry is more and more moving into incorporating customer into CSR. An example of this type of co-creation of responsibility would be, for example, a hotel chain that has installed hourglasses in their showers. The idea is that, of course, saving water, if we look at the drought, for example, that we experienced in France last summer, this is a very important initiative. Telling customers that you have to save water in a hospitality environment, that is very hard because this can be interpreted completely incorrectly by the customer. However, installing these hourglasses gamifies this. It makes it a game. Take that 2-minute shower instead of a 5-minute shower. This is an example of gamifying CSR. Of course, a lot of the examples in the industry are not quite yet there. There are many communications, use of renewable materials, the removal of, for example, single-use plastics from the industry is a very good example of these initiatives that the industry is taking these days.
And this is why it's so complex, but so exciting to implement sustainability strategies into this specific field. You need to have on board your guests, your customers. So I take a basic example, which is right now a heavy example. Are you ready to have, as a guest, a temperature of 19 degree in your room? Okay, some of us, of course, and some others not at all. So as a service provider, as an hotel company,
Yes.
I need to strongly assume the fact that it will be good for the planet and it will be okay for you.
Exactly.
So, and there are numerous examples. You need really to embark your customers
Yes.
into your sustainability policy.
What also makes hospitality interesting is that there are so many different levels of, let's say, if we take hotels again as an example of the industry, you have your economy hotels, mid-scale, you can go all the way to luxury. And luxury, for example, is a completely different environment in terms of doing or undertaking initiatives like for example, temperature.
Yes.
And in that environment, there is a new type, an emerging type of CSR that I'm seeing, which is really incorporating CSR into the customer experience, not as a sacrifice, not as a lower temperature or a shorter shower, but as part of the experience. And this is what luxury resorts particularly are starting to do. For example, they build nature conservation initiatives and involve customers to work for such a project for a day. It can be also things like beach cleaning. High-end resorts invite their customers to go and clean beaches for a day, for example, at the location. Yes, they educate customers, and this way the customers can feel that they're not just enjoying this amazing luxurious holiday, but there is some purpose. They are giving back something, and this is the sort of currently emerging trend in the luxury and of hospitality.
It's true, there is a big trend about the integration into the local community.
Yes.
So it's not just around nature. It's just to connect with people outside the hotel. Before, it's true, the hotel were a little bit islands and or a refuge.
Yes.
Okay, for foreigner customers. And now, especially the young generation, the millennials, they would like to discover really, truly the society they are in. So I remember the director of Le Scribe at Paris saying they are organizing concerts, they are organizing a painter exhibition, but just around, coming from the neighborhood, just to connect local people with the guests.
Yes, similarly, I know of initiatives in Thailand, for example, where guests are taken to local schools to give classes on topics, to discuss topics with the students. Really, this is the similar sort of finding a human context and contact, and bringing that as part of the customer experience. And to me, this is a very important part of CSR, the social side of sustainability.
This is not the environmental part, this is also the social part, yes.
And you need to think or to rethink about your marketing, about your customer targets, because it will have some implications.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to focus on certain specific segments, for example, the millennials or young people, or you can move your offer, and slightly, if you are moving your offer, you are moving your customer basis.
Of course.
So you need to go back to the full marketing when you are implementing this kind of policy.
Okay, and by this way, is the implementation of CSR sustainability practices still important to hospitality guests, and why or why not? Do you have some points of view?
My point of view is absolutely yes. Absolutely. Yes, it is interesting that Eric mentioned millennials, for example, different customer segments, because there's a lot of evidence these days, particularly the younger generations being interested more and more in what is known as purpose, that I mentioned, the idea that there is something more societal in the guest experience than simply the hedonistic idea of a wonderful holiday. So I believe first from that sense that there's a lot of new generation of guests coming into the hotels that will be looking for such aspects, will be looking for them as given, not as something that would be nice to have, but that has to be there.
Yes.
And I don't think it is just a generational difference, because if you look at more overall surveys among travelers, for example, Expedia and Booking.com do these surveys every year, and what is clear in these surveys is the notion of meaningfulness, the notion of purpose that people are looking for. Last spring, for example, Expedia survey very clearly indicates that people are even willing to pay more for these aspects, which obviously, since hospitality business is very important to the hoteliers. So for me, the implementation of these practices will become even more important, not only in the sense of it has to be done, but it has to be part of the customer experience. And I believe also it has to be part of the employee experience, because as you know, the industry is going through a crisis almost in obtaining workforce at the moment after the pandemic. Every business in the sector is struggling with this. And to me, the sustainability, the social sustainability of employment is equally important in attracting workforce, in addition, obviously, to more traditional means of salaries and overall compensation. But I believe that this will also be very important in the future.
Okay, Eric, what is your point of view?
It's a very interesting question, because it's about the focus of our society.
Yes.
It's true that the start was long. Maybe we can have a specific date, start of the 70s, where the Brundtland report for the UN was written. And then it was very long in the hotel industry, maybe especially, but fully in the full economy, to have this kind of policies really implemented. Then, let's say in the 90s, surely at the start of our century, things are coming. So the offer now is really here, and practices are sometimes very are integrated in the basics of the industry. I take the example of the plastic bottle of water. It's now rare to find this kind of plastic bottle in let's say 4 stars, 5 stars, even palaces. So now it's becoming basic. It's integrated in the practices. So the offer is okay. The demand was growing a lot, and Henri said that it's part of the millennial definition. But now we have different topics coming. With the COVID crisis, with the war in Ukraine, people are focusing on different subjects. So this question still pending. Sustainability will be part of the basic, will stay as an important topic in our society, in the hotel companies, for the guests, or other topics will come and the wave of the sustainability will go.
Okay.
And so it's true. It's truly an open question. In my mind, it will stay forever. It's a strong, again, definition for young people, for even older people, like us, Henri. And now it's part of the way we would like to live in this world.
Yes.
So it's strongly in the life of everybody, and so it's strongly in the demand for the hotel industry.
And coming back to the program, to the MSc program, how does the Master of Science prepare students to implement and foster CSR sustainability practices as future leaders in the hospitality industry?
So we have, as an introduction, a mandatory course in CSR. So from the start, we are speaking about CSR. Then we have different pieces in the program on this specific topic. Of course, we have a course about environment and hospitality linked together, which is very interesting. Developing, for example, the Costa Rica policy for their hotel. So Costa Rica as a destination is a trendy, sustainable destination. And we have the social part, not everywhere, but in all our big projects. Every semester has a big project done by our students, and sustainability is part of this project. For the first semester, it's around the ephemeral restaurant.
Yes.
We are just in. And for the second semester, it's about brand design for the hotel industry. So, and for the third semester, it's about a consulting project. So in all these three projects, sustainability is a key part.
Okay.
Yeah, I can maybe give there a practical example of actually this restaurant concept project that the students are working on. I just today came from one of those concepts, and one of the groups, we obviously in these times, we also asked them about takeaway options, and they have to develop a takeaway option. But this one group of whose restaurant I just visited, they did not want to use the traditional paper dishes for this, which obviously leads to the question of, well, if you give real dishes, how is this going to work? And they had developed a whole recycling program of you can get deposit money if you then return these dishes that are better than obviously the paper dishes. So it was a very interesting idea, for example. So this kind of little things are incorporated in practice when the students are first, we discuss these topics with them, but then they themselves get to incorporate them. And I think another good example, we do field trips, hospitality weeks in different places.
London?
Yes, we had a London week, and as part of that trip, one of the hotels that was visited was called the Good Hotel, which is actually a social business. It is not a profit-seeking. They donate away all their profits, and the whole concept is built around community engagement, supporting the community. Still, this is a very high-end hotel, but the whole idea is to create support for the community. So in addition to these courses that Eric was talking about, we have these practical aspects and discuss different matters. We visit even local charities that support, for example, the restaurant workers in the area. We visited one such charity. So we try to incorporate it from many different aspects in the program.
Students are really living the experience, and they are hearing directly professionals, so which is fantastic. And of course, as a teacher, when you are forgetting the subject, students are coming back, so you will never, you will always teach a little piece of this subject. always.
Okay, so this is quite interesting. Thank you for your expertise on all these subjects. Maybe we could jump into the questions we may have received from the participants. So the first question is from Edward. So how do you see the future of CSR sustainability in the hospitality industry? Eric, do you have an idea?
Okay, thank you, Edward, for this good question. So I talked a little bit about the subject.
Yes.
It will stay forever. This is my mind. This topic will be important and for the industry in the future. Is still important now, and it will probably be integrated in the basic of the hotel industry. Any hotel will try to reduce its waste. Every hotel will try to use less water, try to minimize the energy, try to better the social practices, try to integrate the hotel and the staff into the local community. So it will be a basic of the industry.
Henry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, in fact, just published an article with more or less that title about the future. To me, really, the notion of purpose and the notion of purpose in two senses, from the customer expectations of incorporating purpose through CSR into the guest experience, and how this will contribute to so-called transformative experiences. Really, this is where the customer has experiences a change during the visit that will alter life also afterwards. I think this type of experiences are coming, and I do see that purpose CSR can be part of this as well. But the second part, purpose, also from the societal perspective, because there's been a major change if we think of when the term CSR was first mentioned in the 70s, where it was basically understood that the purpose of a company is to bring profits to its owners, to the idea that there are actually some other aspects to responsibility, to the idea that there are more stakeholders to a business than simply their owners. These days, really the notion of a business needing to have a societal purpose, it is not just about the business and even the stakeholders of the business itself. It is about the larger societal thinking around a company. And I believe this will impact other businesses, but it will definitely impact hospitality business, because it is tourism and hospitality is such an important employer worldwide.
Okay.
It's true that the question of purpose, or the sense, is very important now for the guests, for the staff, and even from all the stakeholders, especially shareholders.
Yes.
So we are coming back on the roots of the capitalism, adding a new way, not only trying to maximize the profit, but try to better the planet, to better the world again. And not only at the hotel level, not only at the guest level, the staff level, but even, and I take this as a hierarchy, at the shareholders level. So I take the example of what we worked during the consulting course I
in
taught.
Las Vegas?
No, my course in Paris about consulting. And we worked on a specific case with Les Arcs, the ski resort in the French Alps. And it was the company asking students to work on a different strategy, trying to include the evolution of the climate, of course, but the real impact of this evolution on our professional practices. So, for example, artificial snow, We need it for customers, but we need to reduce it for the planet. So where is the balance? How can we deal with this? So this is just one example, and it was awesome. The results were really awesome, and les Arcs, they integrated some advices coming from the students on this specific topic.
Okay. We have a second question, an interesting question from Jose from Peru. Do you believe that the hospitality industry could do more to attract green-minded customers, and how? Henry, do you have an idea?
Yes, I do believe in this very much, and I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, with the climate crisis, with the biodiversity crisis, really the environmental aspects of sustainability, these factors are much more in the common knowledge at the moment, and concepts such as net zero carbon emissions, for example, more and more people are aware of what this means. And hospitality companies are very keen on looking at practical aspects such as this net zero or net positive hospitality, for example, the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, which incorporates a lot of the major hospitality players, is providing tools for this. So on one hand, I believe that this type of green initiatives can give exact evidence on what is being done, and this can be fed as information that can attract customers. The other thing is what I was talking about earlier, is the sort of incorporating sustainability into the customer experience. But all of this requires the courage from the companies to communicate, to bring these aspects in, because still at the moment, a lot of companies are naturally a little bit shy about this, and they may be doing very good things that really also have very good evidence, supporting evidence, but these are not brought into the customer's attention very strongly in many cases. And there, I believe there's a great opportunity in responding to this demand for purpose through communicating better.
Eric?
As I said, some countries are playing this card, like Costa Rica. Some companies, but a few, rare, are playing fully this card. And again, usually they are integrating sustainability as a piece of their strategy, but it's not the only piece. So to attract more green-minded customers, I think it's a question of course, technical thing. You need to transform your hotel physically. Marketing, you need to connect nicely with these people. And here is the question of labels. Henri spoke about Booking or Expedia. So they developed some labels to try to connect offers with demands. So this could be improved a lot, I think.
Question from Luke from the United States. How do you see greenwashing in the industry, and how do we combat it? Henry?
Yes, well, greenwashing, this obviously it's a great question and connects with what we just discussed about attracting customers, because this is the other side of the coin. You may be doing great things and you try to convince your customers of this and attract them through those great things. However, there are in various industries obviously many bad examples of greenwashing. We think of Volkswagen, for example. So this is the risk. So greenwashing, the idea that none of this is real and it is only done for marketing purposes. There are different ways of doing this. France is working on a law to make greenwashing illegal, which to me is an interesting idea, but I feel that it may be quite difficult to ever get anybody legally responsible for that. I mean, it is a good precedent. There's obviously regulation on what has to be done, which can improve and help in combating greenwashing. But to me, really the biggest, the most powerful force against greenwashing is the guest, is the customer, and the notion that people are getting more and more aware of CSR, of sustainability, and if there are baseless claims around it, it can really hurt your reputation. So in today's business climate, I don't think a company should really be taking that risk of losing everything or losing a significant chunk of your brand value. But yet, of course, like said, it remains a risk, and this is why companies are progressing slowly in the topic, even though I believe there is great potential there.
Yes, I have two development about this. The first one is that you need to take attention to the fact that it's a question of perception. So it's the perception of the customers, let's say, and the perception of the company doing things. These things are okay, are in the right direction or not. I'm coming back to the fact that a lot of practices around sustainability are not basics. So it's no more sustainable. It's basics. So for some customers very involved in the sustainability, saying that, hey, we have no more plastic bottles. Great. No, of course, but you need to go further. Okay. So again, it's a question of balance between all these perceptions, and it's not so. It's a little bit complex. A solution, again, it could be the labels, the norms, as Henry developed. Where you try to minimize perceptions and you are trying just to work on facts. Okay. How many cubic meters of water do you have less than the year before? So you are working on norms and standards and numbers. So this is one way to reduce this green washing effect. And second thought I have around this topic is the fact that generally the hotel part of the carbon footprint is 1%, 1 little percent of the total carbon footprint of your leisure, your holidays. Okay. So the biggest part is transportation, and usually this part is done with flights. So yes, of course, hotel could do a better part, but I think that the main part should be done by other actors, especially airline companies. But for the hotel, there is another way to think about this. For example, to change the customer basis and try to have more local consumers. And with the COVID crisis, it was interesting because they developed this local consumers part. So maybe it's one way. I'm coming back to the Les Arcs little consulting project. One final conclusion was, hey, maybe we can do more with the train station just on the bottom of the resort, Bourg Saint-Maurice. There is a direct connection with Paris and a direct connection with Amsterdam, London, so our main customers. So maybe we can do much more with the transportation and not just with the hotel part.
There's an interesting example about that. The resorts of Soneva studied some years ago, including actually carbon mitigation for the flights to places like the Maldives, where they are, into their rates. So basically the customer who comes to their hotel has to pay carbon mitigation for the flights there, which is a really interesting idea, and it was a big risk that they took some years ago in doing this, asking, will the customer accept this, because this is not of course the tradition, and they have been quite successful in this actually. So there is some precedent already about this sort of larger thinking, and even customers being willing to contribute. Of course, we are talking of a very high-end luxury resort with very high wealth individuals as customers.
Question from Lily now. Are CSR practices different in Europe compared to other countries like the USA, for example? Lot of question.
Wow, that's a really good question, in the sense that during the program the students get to observe actually hospitality on different continents. As mentioned, in London we do a field trip. Of course, in Paris we do a field trip, and we also do a field trip in the US in the hospitality industry there. And there's also the semester in Las Vegas. So the students actually get to answer this question also themselves and get an understanding what really international hospitality management is. As such, to answer the question here, are the practices different? To me, they are more different depending on what type of hospitality, for example, what type of hotels we're talking about. Are we talking about city hotels? Are we talking about resorts? Are we talking about paradise resorts somewhere in a wonderful location, which has a completely different approach than let's say, a city hotel in London? Yes, the basics are the same, but to me the differences are more related to the type of a business.
And again, it's an industry, the hotel industry, where you have the eyes of your guests everywhere, quite everywhere. There is a lot of front of the house operations. So it's very obvious to do something around water in Kenya, in Tanzania, where you have safari lodges, for example. And it's not so obvious in London, downtown. Okay, it's no more. It's obvious to do something in Finland, where you have a lot of snow everywhere, with energy. Okay, obviously there is something to do. So the hotel companies are helped by their customers to focus a little bit more on these very important subjects. So this is one. Second, again, there is a question of eyes on the subject. And here we have some different eyes coming from different countries. So usually as European citizens, we are looking to China, and with a lot of pollution coming from the factory of the world. And now when we are receiving Chinese students, they are very much sustainability oriented. And these millennials coming, and the others coming from China, from India, from Tanzania, from Chile, from Spain, from Italy. We have 1/4 or between 1/4 and a third of our cohort coming from the world. So we have all these eyes all these discussions, all these debates. And we can see that, of course, this question of sustainability is worldwide. We have the COP27 just a few days ago, and we saw that the countries of the South are not the countries of the North, if I summarize quickly. So it's true that the reality in their society is a little bit different from Europe, let's say. And maybe we can speak about what is happening inside Europe, because it's not a who. As a matter of fact, the eyes are different, and the practices are probably different. How can I reduce the water consumption in Kenya is not at all the same as in Europe.
Of course.
Maybe in Europe, we need to think about the very large swimming pool we can have. And maybe in Kenya, in the Safari Lodge, maybe we need just to think about the shower.
Of course.
So different questions.
And finally, we have a question more related to the program. Do you have any examples of CSR jobs after the Master of Science program? Question from Gabrielle from France.
So we have some students working on this specific subject in the headquarters of big chain, big hotel companies, like Accor, for example, like IHG. We have people doing some entrepreneurial project, having some entrepreneurial development in the restaurant industry or even in the hotel industry. And usually sustainability is a number one topic. And both with the environmental side and the social side. And of course, we have the vast majority of our students are working in the operations. And of course, they are facing what we developed just before, reduction of waste, less energy, less water, because they are implied in the everyday project trying to better the hotel.
Henrik?
Yeah, and really I see that on two levels. Yes, the major companies, hotel companies, say they have their CSR roles, they have sustainability roles in, let's say, procurement, for example. So there are the specific roles. There are associations that work in the field, such as the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance or the Long Run, which are both focused in these fields. But then that's not the only job where these topics are important. What Eric was saying, that CSR sustainability, it's not an add-on. It is too often seen as an add-on and a department. Really, it is what people do in the field. So whether you are working in hotel operations, you are working in a restaurant, you are in charge of a restaurant. We have talked a lot about hotels, but obviously restaurants are similarly the part of the hospitality industry. It is that practical understanding of the field that can then convert into changes in practices, how, let's say, restaurants deal with food waste, for example. How do they minimize food waste, as one example? And it is the people there in the operations who have to see and think about this, and having been exposed to all the topics around sustainability during the studies will also help to build this exposure, even if it isn't the exact job description to be a CSR or sustainability officer.
Well, I think we have covered the major part of this topic, but this large topic. This webinar is coming to an end. So thank you once again for your time, for your expertise on this large and interesting subject. Of course, if you have any more question about the program or the admission process, you can contact us, and especially me. You will find my contact details in the end of this webinar. And yes, thank you very much for joining this webinar, and talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.